I'd like to call this meeting to order, please. Can I have a mover and a seconder to call the meeting to order? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Motion that the regular meeting of Council of the Township of Springwater of June 5th, 2019 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem led by Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Thank you.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love, in all our sons command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you. Okay, Council, any pecuniary interest to disclose this evening? No, seeing none. Okay, we're moving on to a delegation, and we welcome Natalie Graham, our Springwater Communications Officer, and Brianna Belcourt, our planner, to make a presentation to Council regarding the Township's new and exciting website. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you, Mayor Allen and Council, for letting us speak to you about the new website tonight, and thank you everyone in the audience for joining us. So we introduced our new website officially to the public on April 16th, 2019. The project was the result of an economic development initiative and consisted of a working group and 2 public input sessions. This working group was internal and consisted of myself, IT, clerks, and planning staff. The 2 public input sessions were held back in September. Members of the public were invited to come out and provide input on what they were looking for in our new website as far as content and where they would look to find that content. After these sessions, we went back and we built the website over about an 8-month process. The new website includes accessibility upgrades to meet Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.0. It aims to make content more accessible to a wider range of people with disabilities, including blindness and low vision, cognitive impairs, photosensitivity, and combinations of these. This includes ensuring proper color contrast and headings, the ability to change font size, and add alternative text to images and links. There's also refreshed and consistent design to stay consistent with our branding guidelines. It's kind of like putting our best face forward to the public and residents and visitors. We've also improved responsiveness and navigation, so it's easy to view our website across all devices, whether it's on your laptop or on your mobile device. There are also several new functions which we'll speak to in the coming slides. So this is just kind of taking you through the home page. So it scrolls down, so this is kind of the first view. So there's several calls to action, and I'll just go through them. Calls to actions are basically anything that you can click to make it really easy and accessible to find information you want quickly. So atop the cross, there's a navigation, and that drops down to that you see there. Just for visual purposes, everything's expanded on this slide. When you go to our website, it does not look like this, but just to get an idea of everything that's actually on the homepage. So through this top navigation, you kind of see a variety of categories that you can click to from there. There's also this I want to button, so you can apply for things easy, pay for things, and report concerns. There's also these drop-down menus, which we rotate out based on trending searches or what people are interested in. For example, we might highlight the farmers market in the summer, the Anvil Maple Syrup Festival, whatever is coming up. We also have these quick links, and again, we can rotate these out based on what people are searching for. This is information that we found through our focus groups that people were looking for. So we put those on the front page. Things like agendas and minutes, recreation programs, bids and tenders, building permits, those things are front and center. If you keep scrolling down the homepage, you'll see this. and these are just more calls to action. Again, we rotate these out. We also have an improved newsroom, so these kind of just, as we post them, they come to our homepage and you can view more news items there. If you keep scrolling, you'll see events, and then it links you to our calendar where you see community events and also upcoming council meetings. And there's also an opportunity to subscribe to our newsletter. As part of our calendar, it's enhanced, so it really has two functions, one a community-facing side and one for council and township meetings. You can expand to view and select specific categories from library events, council, community hall, rec programs, whatever you're looking for. If you click into any of the events, it shows you more information. There's also an opportunity to change the view, so if you prefer to see things as a list rather than a calendar, you can see it this way. You can also search by keywords or event type. It also allows public submissions on the calendar, so community members now have a space to advertise their events, and it doesn't have to necessarily go through a township communications person. They just need to create an account through our website. They do have to follow certain parameters to post. We won't let people post everything, but if it is a public event and it's open to the public, then they're more than welcome to include it. And township staff typically approve the event within 24 hours before it goes public. And it's really easy to submit an event. You just click that button there, create your account, and then you're good to go. Once your account's created, you can edit your events after that. You can also see agendas and minutes quite clearly another way, just by clicking this, and you'll see a bunch of meeting dates upcoming, and then you can click the agenda, minutes, webcast, whatever you're looking for there, and it'll bring you right to the agenda. This is kind of what our email subscription and news items looks like. So you can access this from the homepage or a variety of other ways, but you can basically just stay up to date on what you're interested in. You don't need to receive emails from us on things that you're not interested in anymore. So from business news, public notices, news releases, emergency alerts, road construction, whatever it might be, and then again, event alerts. You can also subscribe to individual pages if you want to get an update every time there's a material change. Things like this might be important for careers if we're posting a new employment opportunity, or recreation programs or camp updates. This is kind of our parks and facilities map, also accessed through our homepage. You can basically just look at different facilities that we offer by type, and you can also go by advanced search. So if you're looking for things like a pavilion or a soccer field, playgrounds, horseshoe pits, you can find them here. It also shows rental information, and it links you to that, so you can see what we actually offer. Clicking any of the facilities shows more information about that facility, whether it has washrooms, if it's accessible, and again, rent. We aim to add photos to all of these locations just to make it a bit more public facing, so the public knows what the park looks like before having to visit it. This is good for residents but also visitors. This is our report of concern, which you can also access from the homepage. From here you can report a variety of concerns from snow clearing issues, signage, animal control, bylaw complaints. You can upload photos, give more information, and it's routed to the right department, so the right person's receiving the complaint and can follow up with you. Searching is probably the best way to find information on our website rather than navigating through it. We do have a new search capability, and staff can see what search words are trending. So if we see that people are searching for things, then we can start to move them to the homepage, or we can display them better. And it also gives us a good indication of people are searching things and they're not finding them, then we're doing a bad job and we need to edit it. So searching is the best way for us to get data, but it's also the best way for users to find things on our site. There's other ways to search, and one of them is the A to Z services. This is kind of just like a quick links. So if you just want to find pages on camps or building permits, you can just click that item and it'll bring you to the right page. We also have a staff directory and contacts. There's a contact at the bottom of every web page, so you're reaching the person you need to reach rather than a general contact.
So what's next? So first off, the website is a living document, so it's constantly changing. So although it's launched, we are constantly looking for ways to upgrade the website and receive feedback on the website. So there is a website feedback button. Also, you can report a concern to provide staff feedback, and we'll take that into consideration and hopefully make the update that's needed. And then additionally, we're working on some add-ons. So on May 16th, our economic development transitional funding was approved, and as part of that, there was two main add-ons that we will be doing for the website. One of those is an improved business directory, so it'll be a more fully integrated business directory within our website. Again, like the calendar, the public will have the ability to update and add their business to the business directory, as well as staff can input data and update it as well. We think this will be a really great feature to help support our local businesses, especially those who don't currently have a web presence. Additionally, we're looking at improving our pay function on our website, or the e-commerce side of things. So it will be a more integrated form and an easier way to accept payment for things such as fire permits and that kind of thing. Eventually that could expand even further to licensing, dog tags, and that. And then I just have an example. How's this work? Nope. Sorry, guys. This is an example of a business directory that eSolutions had prepared for Kawartha Lake. So you can see it's part of the website. It doesn't take you off-site like our current website does, so we can keep people on our website and searching within. And it's much more visually pleasing and meets our would blend with our branding. That's everything, I think.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. A contact is there for staff and the public to email us with questions and suggestions, but we're happy to answer any questions you may have now as well.
Thank you, ladies. Excellent. We're very excited about this. It's a great improvement, and I know you worked very hard at it. So, Council, any questions, comments? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. A question. I've gone on the website. I thought it was pretty good. Easy to find things. The words are clickable, which is kind of nice because sometimes people don't know that a picture is clickable, but when they see the word in a defined color on a regular basis. One of the things I did find, however, and heard from a couple other people, is that when they're doing Google searches or Bing searches, some of the documents that used to come up no longer do. Like when you're within the website, not an issue, but for someone who's just doing a Google search, a lot of the material that was initially there doesn't seem to be, they're coming up with the 404 page.
Yeah, and our IT guy is in the audience, so if I misspeak to this, he's here to correct me. But from my understanding is that Google indexes these things past when our website, our old one, expired. So it will be in Google search for a amount of time. I don't know what that amount of time is. You know?
No.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is it fair to say that people will start to find those items again, that they haven't just disappeared?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Google reindexes, again, and nobody really,
Can you step up to the mic,
Defined
Michael,
period.
because it's being recorded, so.
Yeah, sorry. Nobody really knows the defined period. I believe they may have a paid service where you can have them reindex your site. They have a few tools there, but it's not guaranteed. Eventually, over time, it will correct itself.
Okay. Questions? Statistics, web use statistics. How you'll be providing those to us on a monthly basis?
Yep, so as part of the communications activity report, they're already in there. The first month when it launched in April, I wouldn't really count those because it was the launch date and we were promoting it heavily, so people are going to gravitate towards the site. In May, they were up, but again, it's hard to really tell because it's only been live for a month. We really want to see it over a certain amount of time, even like 6 months would be more reasonable rather
Right.
than, when it first launches, just so we can get really the use of people using it on the day-to-day rather than just going to see what's new.
Good. Now, I know people anxiously anticipate council meetings and agendas coming out and look at the streaming. So can you run us through a quick example of how quick and easy it is to access an agenda and take a look at the streaming?
Yeah, if Renee gives me the mic. Okay. Let's just go to the website here. So if you're looking for agendas, they're right on the home page. So you can just click that, and then from there, it brings you to our document center. And again, you can just search by year. So if you're looking for a past date or if you're looking for an upcoming meeting, it will be there. If you're looking for the latest live stream, and this is funny because I might see myself on camera. So you can either go to Mayor and Council, and then Council meeting webcasts, and you'll see it here.
Okay.
Um,
And previous versions,
so we know it works.
previous versions, if you want to scroll and say, oh, I want to go back and look at a certain meeting.
So again, you just go into here in our document center, and then everything's here. So if you're looking for something as far back as 2009, you'll be able to find the council agenda in minutes.
But in the webcast, when you're with the streaming, if you want to look at a council meeting
Oh,
streaming. the
Of
previous-
course. So after this meeting is done, it gets reverted back to almost like a YouTube content player, and it just has all of our videos, and you can scroll through them or connect to our YouTube channel. Right now, it just has the current video up because it's live.
And so using this example, where would people find the current agenda that came out last Thursday?
And this is where we are.
It used to be at the, for previous meetings that are on the streaming, is the agenda
Yep.
still below it?
Yes.
Okay,
So if you just scroll down here, it's right here.
with reports, right?
Yes.
Good.
So those are just links, and then you would be able to see the reports from there.
Okay,
Yeah, and then we tweet and Facebook this link out about 2 hours before the meeting to give people enough time. But that's there every meeting. So if you can't find it on our website, I do encourage people to follow us on social media.
excellent. Oh, and so the other ways they can follow us again are?
So Facebook and Twitter, but I also advise people to go and subscribe to some of our news categories. You don't have to subscribe to everything. It's really just what you're interested in. A lot of people are interested in public notices, and we post those as they come out. And you just get an update every time it's posted. For events, you'll get something every Friday, just kind of saying, here's what's next week. And again, it's just what you choose to subscribe to, and you can unsubscribe at any time.
Okay, excellent. All right, can I have a mover and a seconder to receive Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore? That the delegation from Natalie Graham and Brianna Belcourt communication regarding the municipal website functions be received. All those in favor? Thank you. Carrie, thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Next, I call upon Ms. Jennifer Lawrence of Jennifer Lawrence and Associates, Inc., representing Friends of Simcoe Forest, to make a presentation to council regarding the Friends of Simcoe Forest and the Environmental Resource Recovery Center. Welcome, Ms. Lawrence.
Thank you.
So I've just asked, speak into the mic, please, because it's, so we get the pickup. Thank you.
Sure. Good evening, councillors and Mayor Allen. My name is Jennifer Lawrence. I'm a registered professional planner. I specialize in environmental land use planning. I've been retained by the Friends of Simcoe Forests to assist them with providing advice on the county and local official plan amendments and the zoning bylaw amendment that is in place for the Simcoe County Environmental Resource Recovery Center, also referred to as the ERRC. So just briefly, who are the Friends of Simcoe Forest? They are a nonprofit organization made up of concerned citizens of Simcoe County. Their goal is to promote the protection and appreciation of the natural environment for current and future generations to use and enjoy. And FSF got involved in the ERRC process when it became clear to them just how many of the candidate sites for this facility were county-owned forests. And to be very clear, FSF does not oppose the county taking responsibility for managing their own waste. Their opposition is to the use of forested land for what is essentially industrial infrastructure. This is an air photo of the preferred site that the county has selected for the ERRC facility. It is west of Highway 400 on the north side of Horseshoe Valley Road. And as you can see from this site, it is entirely forested, and it is known as the Freely Forest Tract. For those who may not be fully aware of the history of the ERC, it's quite long and I can't possibly get it all in 10 minutes, but very briefly, in 2010, Simcoe County released a solid waste management strategy, and within that strategy, there were recommendations related to waste management, including the need to consider a transfer station and a composting facility. Consultants were retained by the county to identify 2 individual sites, one for a materials management facility or a transfer station, and one for an organics processing facility or a composting facility. Partway through the process, the county decided rather than 2 individual sites for these facilities, they would look to put a joint facility on one site. And that's when it became referred to as the Environmental Resource Recovery Center. And at the beginning of the process, in consultation with the Ministry of the Environment, the county determined that the ERRC was exempt from requiring an environmental assessment under the Environmental Assessment Act. In my professional opinion, that's a very important decision that was made that has policy implications as we get on in the process. And I'll get to that a bit later. So there was a 3-stage site selection process that was undertaken. There were 502 candidate sites originally identified by the county. And screen 1, that's up on the screen now, was used to take those 502 sites and whittle them down to a long list of potential candidate sites. As you can see, there were 8 criteria that were used to screen these candidate sites. And in almost all circumstances, the criteria that is used to determine whether a site should advance to the next level of screening is to avoid. So, avoiding wetlands, avoiding source water protection areas, avoiding prime agricultural land. Everything is avoid except one, and that's terrestrial. And rather than avoiding the county greenlands, the criteria says you should consider impacts to county greenlands. And that's because if that were to say avoid county greenlands or avoid impacts to county greenlands, it would have eliminated right away 50%, a minimum of 50% of the sites, because 50% of the sites were county forests. And it would have eliminated almost all of the county-owned properties that were up for consideration. So instead, what screen 1 does, there's a small footnote on terrestrial, and it says that certain sites may be exempt from meeting this criteria, and they'll be allowed to pass on to the next screen level with the promise of doing some additional, more intensive natural heritage evaluation at that time. So then we move on to the screen 2, and there's some new and different criteria that are added to the selection process. And the purpose of screen 2 is to take that long list of sites and whittle them down to a short list of sites. And that commitment to undertake a more vigorous or rigorous examination of the candidate sites from a natural heritage perspective that they mentioned under screen 1 sounds promising until you look at the criteria in the site selection process in screen 2. And under environment, natural heritage is not one of the criteria that are considered. Now, where natural heritage may have been considered in this site selection process is under the land use and zoning. But the problem is the local official plans and the policies and the mapping associated with them are out of date when it comes to the current natural heritage policies that the province has in place. So for example, the Springwater official plan on the preferred site that the county has identified for the ERRC shows almost the entire site as designated as agricultural and rural, with only a very small component designated as environmental protection. Whereas that exact same site in the county's official plan is entirely designated as county greenlands, because their official plan is up to date and now current with provincial policy. So during the site selection process, these older official plans and the mapping and policies associated with them were used to allow, again, forested sites to further advance onto another stage of the selection process, because it was based on old and out-of-date policies and mapping. So then we move on to the screen 3 of the selection process. This is to take the shortlisted sites and whittle them down to a preferred site. And again, there are a number of criteria that are applied to the different sites, and they are assessed in detail with the exception of environment. And when you look at the screen 3 process, once again, environment and the review of natural heritage impacts are pushed to a subsequent stage in the planning process again. And the detailed evaluation of any of the sites are deferred to the Planning Act application that would take place later. So why is this important? This is important because that means a preferred site was chosen for this facility without knowing whether that site could meet provincial, county, or local planning policies related to natural heritage features and functions, and without evaluating and comparing the relative natural heritage impacts between those shortlisted sites. So this is just a quick visual in terms of the preponderance of county forests within the site selection process. So as I mentioned, 502 candidate sites at the beginning of the process. Half of those sites are county forests. we get to the screen 1, this is when there were still 2 independent sites, and up to almost 80% of the sites remaining in the screen 2 are county forests. Sorry, in screen 1. When you get to screen 2, once again, 80% of the sites remaining are county forests, and then when you get to screen 3, the preferred site is a county forest. So from my perspective, some of the key policy considerations that are important to think about when reviewing the official plan and zoning amendment applications is that the site selection process itself was undertaken outside of any legislated process. Why is that important? That's important because the site selection process, there was no ability for anyone to contest or appeal the preferred site that was selected. So you could voice your concerns, you could attend public meetings and express your concerns with the site selection process and the preferred site, but there was no one to take those concerns to above the proponent themselves. The preferred site was selected prior to any detailed natural heritage evaluation. As I mentioned, all the sites were screened against other criteria, legal, cultural, social, all of those, except for environmental. And given that some of the shortlisted sites were not county-owned forests, it's possible that a detailed natural heritage evaluation, even undertaken on the shortlisted sites, could have resulted in a preferred site that was not a county forest, because presumably there would be other sites that would have less impact to natural heritage features if they were within an industrial area, let's say, for example. The preferred site is located entirely within the county Greenlands designation and within the provincial growth plan's natural heritage system, and it meets the criteria to be considered as an environmental protection category 2 in the Springwater official plan. So these factors are important because proposals for infrastructure within the county Greenlands, the Springwater EPC 2, and the growth plan's natural heritage system are not permitted unless a proponent has demonstrated that there will be no negative impact to the natural features and functions. And proposals for infrastructure within the growth plan NHS are only permitted if they're supported by an approved environmental assessment. And as I mentioned earlier, this facility was exempt from an environmental assessment under the Environmental Assessment Act. So in that case, there has been no approved environmental assessment, and as such, in my opinion, it cannot meet the growth plan NHS policies. The provincial policy statement, along with the county official plan and the Springwater official plan, all prohibit development within significant woodlands and significant wildlife habitat, unless the proponent has demonstrated that such development will cause no negative impacts to the natural heritage features or functions. The environmental impact study that was done by the county confirmed that the site is a significant woodland and it consists of significant wildlife habitat. However, the conclusion of the EIS that's done on behalf of the county is not that there will be no negative impact, which is the test of the provincial policy. Their conclusion is there will be no net negative impact. But no net negative impact is not the same, in my professional opinion, as no negative impact. And no net negative impact necessarily implies that there is a negative impact, but that it's going to be offset somehow through something that's going to take place off-site, through planting and restoration. Now, if, in my experience, no net negative impact is not the test that is applied by the province to impacts on significant features. And and if you were to think, if it were to be the test, if you could just use no net negative impact as your test, then technically you could remove any provincially significant feature from the landscape as long as you replicated it somewhere else. As long as you recreated a forest or a wetland or something somewhere else, you could remove it anywhere on the landscape. That's not my experience as a planner as to how the provincial policy is implemented. And I think if that was their intention, the provincial policy would very clearly use the terminology no net negative impact, but it does not use that terminology.
Okay, we usually limit it to 10 minutes, and we're at 12 minutes, so.
Okay, thank
if
you.
could
Well,
wrap up,
this is
please.
really just a summary of what I've already said. So these are the recommendations that we're making from a planning perspective. And as I mentioned, it's very hard to summarize many years' worth of information in 10
No,
minutes.
you've done very well.
And we have, Friends of Simcoe Forest have brought along correspondence that they have shared with the ministry and the county. If anyone needs copies, I'm sure they would be happy to provide them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council, questions, discussion? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent overview. I appreciate it. And it's nice to hear from somebody on the outside rather than what we normally get, because we don't always have the outside options available to us. We do have our legal opinions from our lawyers and what we can do going forward in the future. When this first came forward, I attended a presentation in Elmville, and to be quite honest, my sense at that time was that the county was going to push this forward regardless of how the township felt about it. I guess my question to you is, if there is a will of this council or this township to try to convince the county, I'm trying to be polite, convince the county that maybe you should rethink this, what would you see as our strongest motivation that we could pass on? When the province has approved it, and the county obviously wants it, it seems to me like we're trying to, push the water up the hill.
Ms. Lawrence?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess what I would say is they require a local official, a plan amendment, and a zoning bylaw amendment from this council to get the approvals for that, for the facility in the location they've asked for it. So in that sense, you have a say in whether or not this takes place. It has been appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, and they will make the final decision at that point. But you would have the opportunity to join that appeal as a party if you chose to, and take whatever position council deemed appropriate.
Thank you. We are going to be moving up the item 10.1 sub 3, which is an information report on the ERC and the LPAT status update. So we will be talking about that after question period. Any other questions or comments at this time? Well, thank you again very much.
Okay.
Good presentation.
Thank you.
Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Moore, that the delegation from the Friends of Simcoe Forest regarding the Environmental Resource Recovery Center be received. All those in favor? Carried. Next, we'll move to question period. So members of the public are invited to ask questions of council or make comments regarding an item on the agenda. Each person may speak for a maximum of 2 minutes, and question period will not exceed 10 minutes. So I invite anybody who wants to raise a question, come forward. Please give your name and address. Speak clearly into the mic. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Linda Van Castren, 3088 Horseshoe Valley Road West. I'm going to read this because I'm very nervous about speaking to people, so I'll try to get through this easily. The consultants for the county for the proposed industrial use of 2976 Horseshoe Valley Road have indicated that the westerly lot line is 110 meters and the closest sensitive receptor is 380 meters. My farm and business share the lot line at 110 meters. My retirement lot, which is 15 acres, also shares that lot line and is 110 meters from the proposed facility. The county is ignoring my standing and is not including this serviced lot as a sensitive receptor. This lot has been serviced since 2010. My new home would be within 200 meters of the proposed facility. I have been reluctant to get a building permit at a cost of approximately $60,000 for a home I would not want to live in if it is in close proximity to a materials management facility, organics processing facility, receiving area, administration building, environmental control facilities, truck servicing area, and public education area. And that's just the start. I would ask how many other building lots in the township are not included in the consultant's reports. We have farmed and created jobs at Nickel Farms for almost 40 years, and the intent has always been for the next generation to take over and continue to be an economic driver. We have lived in Springwater Township for more than 60 years and would like to continue that when we retire. Our future is in your hands. I ask that you take a look.
Thank you very much. And we certainly have been aware of the correspondence you've sent up to this point, and thank you for bringing this forward tonight.
Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good evening, David Strawn from 47 Finlay Mill Road in Midhurst. I'm also speaking on behalf of the Midhurst Ratepayers Association, of which I am a member. My question concerns items 9.3 to 9.7 on the agenda tonight. I was a member of the Midhurst Residents Liaison Group, which used to meet regularly to follow developments of the Midhurst Secondary Plan. Last time I asked the question, none of the conditions imposed by the OMB on the Midhurst Secondary Plan developers had been fulfilled. So my question tonight is, as the Residents Liaison Committee is no longer active, please may I have an update on how many of the OMB conditions have now been satisfied?
Okay, we'll, as you say, once we get to action reports 9.2 through 9.8, Director Spagna will be giving a preamble to that, and
Okay.
certainly be glad to address that.
Okay, so I do have a follow-up question. Assuming that not many of them have been satisfied, which I imagine is the case, and as the province has yet to provide a verdict on the environmental study report submitted last September, which is to determine the suitability of the development for this area, and as there is still an unresolved conflict between the Midhurst Secondary Plan and the 2017 Growth Plan with respect to minimum intensification targets and the Midhurst built boundary, and as the usual developers request a longer extension time frame, whereas Springwater Township typically grants a 1-year extension to the OMB decisions. Example for that is Hillsdale, which has been renewed several times annually. So therefore, in view of these unresolved issues, if any extension is to be granted, the Midhurst Ratepayers Association requests that Council takes the safer route and grants the developers the usual 1-year extension for the draft plan approval, pending a review of the process next year.
Okay, thank you for your comment, and that also will be addressed as part of Director Spagno's report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next, please.
Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Councillors, my name is John Spring. I live in Allenville, Ontario. I'm here tonight concerning the report that is going to be given on the agenda about gravel road conversions. I have read the report in detail, and my question is I would like to know if the council would consider this report to be fair in its present form. There are many taxpayers in Springwater Township that live on gravel roads that would feel this is an extremely unfair report. I myself feel that this report is grossly unfair and needs to be amended. The present form right now should be felt, the council should feel that it is totally inadequate in its present form. I would like to ask the council if they feel that the report is fair, but I don't think it's fair to put you on the spot, but I think that you should think about this before you accept it.
Mr. Spring, can you be more specific as to the unfairness of the report? Is there a part of it?
If you were a taxpayer in Springwater Township and you lived on a gravel road and you have a 10-year plan and there is absolutely no hope of you getting any kind of a hard surface whatsoever in favor of people that are already living on hard top roads, getting them upgraded, how fair is that?
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I get the gist of what you're saying, yes. So we will move forward the gravel road report review and discussion, which is 9.10, to after the Environmental Resource Recovery Center, and we'll continue the discussion then.
Thank you.
Thank you. What stage are we at? What time? Okay, we have room for one final. Yes, sir?
Mayor Allen, Deputy Mayor Coughlin, councilors, my name is Ed Kreitcher. I'm at 1286 Rainbow Valley Road East, and I live in behind the proposed ERRC. And so I verbally made my comments, these comments, and also in written form to the county when they had their open meetings. And my wife and I have a farming operation, and we breed horses. And for the past 17 years, we have been developing our business. We are on the cusp of Olympic caliber horses in our breeding operations. With our partnerships and our sales, we have the proof that our horse business is a viable, functioning business. And when I made my presentation to the county, I made that clear to them that with this new facility going into their location, the noise and the noise pollution and all the traffic and all the ambient lighting would affect our breeding operations. And at that time, it was brought up by some of the councilors, what would the farming operations around the area be impacted, and how would the county address that? To this day, the county still hasn't addressed our farm operation future prospects and how that ERRC will impact us. And I would like to know what the township will do to somehow get the county on side about addressing the farmers in the area. We bought that farm with due diligence for the setting for our future business prospects, and we believe that our future business prospect will be impacted by this. Thank you.
Am I correct in saying that there has been no discussion or approach by the county to any of the surrounding property owners for initiating compensation discussions? Is that correct?
Well, the discussions that I was involved with the county was that, well, maybe we'll decrease your taxes for a couple quarters. That's the best they've done so far.
And that's been casual conversation or a meeting or
In meetings.
correspondence?
In meetings with the, there was a group of owners that lived within close proximity, the 500-meter families. I was part of that. And so there is no farm considerations about what the county would financially compensate us for.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, thank you for those questions. So we'll move on and we'll pull 10.1 item sub 3, which is an information report on the Environmental Resource Recovery Center, information and LPAT status update. So I'll start by turning to Director Spagnell to give us an overview. This is we have heard and certainly are sympathetic and have argued and tried to get advancement on the issues that you have expressed verbally and in writing and in meetings to the county. And Director Spagnell is going to summarize the current process as it's moving along with LPAT. And it's, as you'll hear, complicated by the fluctuating changes that are happening by the provincial government with respect to changes in the growth plan. So I'll turn it over to the expert because I've just exhausted my expertise in that. So Director Spagnell.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The purpose of the report is to provide just an update and a summary of where things sit from a status standpoint. What I'm going to do is I'm going to provide just a brief overview of how we got to where we are and next steps moving through the process. As everybody in the room who's here for this matter knows, the property at 2976 Horseshoe Valley Road is proposed for the Environmental Resource Recovery Center by the county. That process was initiated in 2017. As a result of the applications for the ERRC, there have public meetings two public meetings, one for an upper tier official plan amendment, which is now known as OPA number 2. That public meeting was held on May 9th, 2017, and was provided to give the public and agencies the opportunity to provide comments. The local official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment public meetings took place on June 19th, 2017. And that also was intended under the Planning Act to provide the opportunity for the public and agencies to provide comment. As a result of comments that were received from the public, from the agencies, including the Ministry of Municipal Housing and Affairs, the county made revisions to their upper tier, or the county official plan amendment, and adopted that amendment on June 26, 2018. That amendment, as I'd like to note again, was based on comments received from the ministry with respect to its ability to meet ministry standards and ministry policy. Pending the adoption of OPA number 2, the ministry provided its approval subject to some minor conditions. In the meantime, as that was going on, the local amendments, so the local official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments were held in abeyance pending the result of the county official plan process. As a result of the approval by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing for the upper tier county official plan amendment, 3 appeals were filed, as interested stakeholders in this room will acknowledge and know. And in addition to that, for lack of decision, the county appealed the township or the local official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment for lack of decision. So what that essentially means is that all matters, as noted by Ms. Lawrence in her presentation, are currently subject to litigation before LPAT, which essentially means that there are going to have to be cases brought forward based on the positions that each agency is going to bring forward with respect to those applications. Now, because the applications are subject to litigation, this council will have to come forward with a position at some point in time in the next month or so, because there has been what's referred to as a case management conference under the current LPAT rules to set the stage for the LPAT deliberations regarding the Environmental Resource Recovery Center. Mayor Allen alluded to changes to Bill 108. What is complicated with this process and how Bill 108 has complicated the process is that in midstream, the rules that are applied to the LPAT process may be reverted back to the old OMB rules, which will have an impact on the broadness of appeals that can be filed and the status that each appellant or party can take, or party or participant can take through the process. So the key point here is that we are currently in a point of litigation. Council will need to form a position with respect to its position with respect to the ERC to move forward through that LPAT process, however it may end up and whatever rules apply. And at the end of the day, there could be multiple positions taken through that process. I hope that that summarizes the status of where things sit right now. Just to briefly go over what the difference is between the rules of LPAT now versus if the old OMB rules come into play. The current LPAT rules generally state that the matter of issue in the test is conformity with provincial policy, where the previous OMB rules essentially looked at an application as a new hearing, which meant that you could bring forward arguments related to anything that has a planning related essence or anything that's considered to be a planning related matter. So that's the key difference between the rules that are in place now and the new, or the old but new OMB rules that could come in effect based on Bill 108. So as indicated by Mayor Allen, the process will be complicated because we're dealing with an influx in rules and because we're also dealing with litigation. I'm available to answer any questions that council may have.
So, in our 2 meetings from now, we will be, as a council, reviewing what our approach, what the possible approaches, given that LPAT process. My understanding is we're waiting for clarification through regulations in the LPAT process, which we hope might be available at the beginning of July. Is that correct, Director?
That's correct, Mayor Allen, and thank you for reminding me of another matter that also comes about as part of this. Because we are subject to litigation in the fact that the applications are before LPAT, the matters that council will be considered will be dealt with through a closed session item, because at the end of the day, stakeholder positions may not align with one another, as tends to happen through an LPAT or a litigative process. But that is correct, that we are waiting to see what the regulations are and what the rules will be. And the date that we've understand to be when this is supposed to come into place is July 1st, which is essentially, I guess it'd be a month and a week before the hearing that I spoke to earlier.
So it's not procrastination, it's not deferring a decision, it's waiting for better understanding and clarification of the roadmap that we're having to deal with. So I'll open it up for comments from council, questions. Okay, well, the motion, I need a mover and a seconder to, is this it? Mover and a seconder, is that it? For that the report number 3, County of Simcoe Environmental Resource Recovery Center, 2976 Horseshoe Valley Road, information LPAT status update be received. Deputy Mayor Coughlin and Councillor Cabral. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we are pulling forward 9.10, the gravel road conversion. And so, I would ask Director Coleman just to give us an overview. It was a report that was written and it gave us some history, but maybe you just give us the highlights of it, Director Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So just a brief summary. The report was generated from a delegation and a request from staff for further information. Basically, the report runs through the history of gravel conversions, which ended in and around 2011. Following that, road needs studies and asset management plans were completed, which helped staff and council to budget and make best possible decisions regarding infrastructural renewal. These documents look at the township as a whole to ensure that we maximize the benefits and minimize risk with the funds that we spend. So I won't go into details on the report. I'm sure you've all read it, but that's just sort of a brief description of where we are today. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So between you and Director Schmidt, the financial impact then of where we're at now, of what we're spending annually on roads, is it the 2.5 million or less than 2.5 million? And maybe you could comment as well on the asset management report and how the recommendation is to fold it into that which is ongoing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I was just getting to the report here. So essentially, in the 10-year capital plan in 2019 alone, we're looking at an investment of approximately just under $1.4 million for the repair and replacement type projects, which this would fall under. So that's the investment that we have secured, if you will, through council through the budget process this year. In order to, if we were, I think Appendix B is what I'm looking at. So if we were to consider the gravel conversions back into the 10-year, we'd be looking at an additional approximately just under $800,000 that we would need to find in order to do those projects. As for the asset management plan, I think we've had discussions over the course of the last year, the township has just recruited an asset management coordinator to assist us with moving forward with our that initiative. There are different requirements that are required under the OREG 588-17, which is deals with asset management plans. We have essentially complied with the first requirement of that OREG, whereby a policy or a strategic policy is required. That was adopted by council in June of last year. So essentially, we're still walking through the process of trying to meet the other requirements that are in that OREG. As for when the asset management plan will be prepared, I think that's something that Director Coleman and myself would have to go back and establish some timelines and come back to council and report on with specific dates when that may come back to council.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Cabral.
Appreciate that. I appreciate the time and effort that goes into these reports, and I certainly thank staff for preparing this report. On review of the report, I noticed some areas which I believed warranted additional context for everyone's benefit in order that a more complete picture might be provided. As we're aware, Mr. Spring made a delegation this past month regarding the paving of a portion of Floss Road 10 West, a capital project that was scheduled to be undertaken during 2019 as per the township's previous 6-year capital plan. The gravel conversion of Floss Road 10 West, along with a number of others, had been included in the 6-year capital plan for a number of years and were scheduled to be completed during 2019. During 2019's budget deliberations, council was presented with a newly drafted 10-year capital plan which was devoid of these particular projects. This particular project, along with a number of other similar gravel conversion projects. As this was the case, the paving of Floss Road 10 West was not discussed nor deliberated during 2019 budget deliberations. Mr. Spring, shortly after learning that the Floss Road 10 West project was no longer being undertaken in 2019 and was not included in the new year 10-year capital plan, made arrangements to make a delegation to council to have the portion of Floss Road 10 West paved and included back in the 2019 capital plan. The gravel conversions were carried out as part of the capital budget. This is from the report, the highlights, until 2011, and that post-2011 budget funds were focused on rehabilitating existing hard-surfaced roads. This report advises that the township had begun converting gravel roads to hard surface prior to 2011. However, in 2011, staff recommended this practice be put on hold and informed council that the yearly budget did not satisfy the existing hard surfaced roads. Staff were instructed to prepare a long-term budget. In reference to this 2011 recommendation to council, it's noteworthy that the recommendation was made to council on July 11th, 2011, through a report authored by the previous Director of Public Works. The impetus stated for the generation of this report was that the 2010-2014 strategic plan adopted by the council at that time included an initiative under the sustained infrastructure heading as follows: improved municipal road conditions and development of an implementation strategy to convert all municipal roads to hardtop surfaces. The current report also speaks to some direction provided to staff during council during an April 4th, 2011 meeting. That this particular paragraph in the present report before us is basically verbatim to the July 11th, 2011 report and reads as follows. Also, during the April 4th, 2011 council meeting, staff was directed to include a strategy to address bridge and culvert maintenance needs in the report regarding hard surface conversions. This report addresses maintenance costs, conversion costs, and bridge and culvert upgrade costs. This report, dated July the 11th, 2011, also reported recommendations to council at the time. The recommendations were, number one, borrow funds to convert all gravel roads to asphalt and to upgrade and repair bridges. Number 2, borrow funds to convert all gravel roads to asphalt and manage bridge repairs on an as-need basis. Number 3, borrow funds for the bridge and culvert rehabilitation and maintenance. Number 4, do nothing. And 5, the option of other. The minutes of the council meeting of July 11th, 2011, where the report was tabled with its options, do not indicate the selection of any of these options by council, but as follows. Item 6.4, road conversion and bridge rehabilitation strategy, resolution number 396/2011, was moved by Councillor McLean, seconded by Councillor Webster, that the report from the Director of Public Works regarding road conversion and bridge rehabilitation strategy dated July 11th, 2011, be referred to staff to prepare a maintenance and replacement plan for roads, culverts, and bridges, including funding options. That motion was carried. In reviewing numerous months of subsequent agendas and minutes, there did not appear to be any further submissions or reports to council on this particular matter. However, the minutes of the council meeting of April the 16th, 2012 show that a report was submitted by the then Director of Public Works in respect of a chip and seal tender wherein funds were included in the 2012 budget for application of chip and seal to Vigo Road, Portage Trail, and Grenfell Road. The background information at that time provided in the report was, and I quote, "Council may recall that funds have been allocated in the 2012 budget for surface treatment, chip seal application to several roads in the township. The projects slated for surface treatment are the reconstruction of Vigo from Floss Road 4 to County Road 92 and the conversion of Grenfell Road and Portage Trail from gravel to hard surface."
Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
I appreciate the detail. Can you sort of summarize what
I'm
your
sorry,
question and comment is?
I apologize, Mayor Allen, but I really can't do that.
Okay.
I'd like to be able to carry on.
How much longer will it take to get through your
Maybe another 3 or 4 minutes, 5 maybe.
Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you. The report from the director, this chip and seal tender result basically was moved by Councillor Webster and seconded by Councillor McConkey. And basically the Director of Public Works' report on chip and seal tender from that particular date, April 16, 2012, was received, and the contract was awarded to Miller Paving in the amount of $288,502. That motion was carried. And the point here is this seems to contradict the suggestion that gravel to hardtop conversions were suspended. The fact that these two hardtop conversions remained in the 6-year capital plan provide further credence that gravel to hardtop conversions remained as capital projects and continued to be undertaken. The Hemson report, Springwater Financial Plan, contracted by Springwater Township and dated May the 2016, provides some insight into the annual general operating costs of our roadways. In that report, page 74, it is indicated that the current annual general operating costs in 2016 were about $620 per paved lane kilometer and $1,670 per unpaved lane kilometer. I believe this to be a very important number given that the general operating costs of an unpaved roadway is almost 3 times that of a paved roadway. The continued non-paving of our gravel roadways is divisive at best and serves to provide a have-not mentality, which is seemingly unfair to those residents paying equal taxation without some measure of equal infrastructure and services. It's clear that those residents residing here in Springwater Township on gravel roadways incur additional personal expenses as well in regards to their vehicle maintenance, ongoing condition, wear and tear through stone chips, windshield chips, undercarriage damage, and frame damage as well as suspension damage and excessive wear and tear due to potholes and washboarding, gravel spray, etc. The unavoidable dust on our rural gravel roadways also result in additional work and expense to our residents for cleaning, not to mention the inhaling of dust, not being able to keep their windows open due to dust infiltration into the home, and those residents living and residing closer to the roadway obviously are the ones most impacted by the dust factor. Dust control costs the township money as well. I respectfully submit that simply putting gravel conversions off for years and years is not fair to residents residing on these roadways. I would suggest that the vast majority of our roadways outside of our urban residential areas have been converted from gravel to hardtop at some point in time. These roadways now seem to be getting exclusive attention in respect of capital budget, and I believe that some of these paved roads might be able to be put off for a year or so on hold so that we can undertake to convert certainly the more major thoroughfare gravel roadways to hardtops. Lastly, I would like to address the report as it relates to the motion that was tabled at the same council meeting Mr. Spring made his presentation at. The motion tabled at that time, C206C-219, moved by Councillor Cabral and seconded by Councillor Ritchie, that the motion now before council be amended as follows: that the project be referred back to staff in order that staff provide options within present budget constraints to council for consideration that would reintegrate Floss Road 10 West back into the 2019 capital budget, and that staff also revisit the other gravel to hardtop capital projects so that they too may be reconsidered back into the 10-year capital plan budget. Seems to me that this motion is not reflected or addressed in the report. The report fails to provide options within the 2019 capital budget through any sort of reorganizing of capital projects that would permit council to have any option within the 2019 capital budget to move forward and direct that the paving of Floss Road 10 West move forward in 2019, which was the intent of the motion. Further, the motion directed that other gravel to hardtop projects be reconsidered back into the current 10-year capital plan. It would appear that Floss Road 10 West was simply included in the appendix along with some other gravel to hardtop conversions, and the costing for such simply added to the capital budget amount, which basically meant that it wasn't included in the capital budget amount. It was in addition to, almost to the tune of $800,000. I'm therefore unable to accept this staff report and the recommendations and feel the motion as tabled has not been adequately addressed in this report. I would then suggest or make motion if necessary to have the report referred back to staff to address the motion more accurately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We did not initially get a mover and seconder to get this on the table, so can we start by doing that, Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman? Thank you. So you're making a motion then as a result of this?
Yes, that the report be referred.
Can you speak in the mic, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That the report be referred back to staff in order to address that specific motion, so that the initial motion can be reflected in the report so that council has an opportunity to look at the 2019 capital budget with options that would include the repaving or chip and tar, whatever it be, of Floss Road 10 West, that particular segment, which was the intent of the initial motion, which would mean reorganizing and providing some options so that we could look at and decide whether or not we were in a position to move forward with it.
Okay, before we proceed with that and potentially get a seconder, CEO Brindley, did you? Yeah, CEO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To approach, staff would be happy to take this back and address some of the points that were raised by Councillor Cabral. The one challenge I have, and it was actually brought up the same day, we actually had 2 tenders on the agenda for infrastructure, and I brought to council's attention that the motion from Councillor Cabral was contrary to the approvals that we were seeking that day on a number of road projects. So it's going to end council. I brought that to council's attention. Council still approved those projects. So we are moving together on those projects. So it will be challenging for staff to reorganize 219 in light of the fact that at that same meeting, council gave the go-ahead and we have now moved forward on those projects. That said, there are other funding envelopes that have become available since that time that we can look at for this project, and we'd be happy to look at for this project. But we're happy to take it back, but I also want council to be aware that at that meeting, I brought attention to council that we had 2 tenders on the agenda, that moving forward on those would impact how we could respond to Councillor Cabral's motion, and those tenders were approved by council.
Right.
So just so that
Okay.
we cannot completely look at redoing 219 because we, at the same meeting, were given the go-ahead to move forward on a number of projects.
For clarification, thank you for that. For clarification for council, the report and the motion refers to the asset management study, and Director Schmidt said timing of being able to get, okay, what I'm driving at is for next year's 220 budget, when we start that later this year, because it's earlier than last year, because last year was an election year, or after an election year, what will be available to council for Q4 of this year to be able to review the 1 year and the 10-year capital plan going forward from a roads perspective? I believe the next road study is scheduled for what year? Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. It's not in the budget for 2019. I had planned to have it in the budget for 2020.
2020.
So it wouldn't be available for this fall, no.
So what will we be using to do the 1 year and 10-year capital plan for 220?
Subject to any changes and different direction by council, I would continue to use the 2017 road needs study.
Other questions, comments? Councillor Moore and then Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just really wanted to say thank you to Councillor Cabral for putting so much effort and time and doing all the research. And I wonder if it's possible, if myself or if the other councillors are interested, I'd like a copy of your submission to help me organize all that information, because there was a lot there. And I would like to hope that your motion includes new pockets of funding options. When you mentioned your options going forward for the rest of this year, that's going to go back to staff to review for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and again, to the funding, excellent, thank you, George. The funding, I know we get gas tax and we get some grants and so on. When staff come back with the report, I'm sure all those tax or gas grants that we've got so far have already been delegated to other things that we're doing. It would be interesting to see if we're going to still get them in the future with this provincial government that we have. But also, it would be nice for me anyway to see the traffic counts on some of these roads, because I would suggest that if we go forward and we start doing certain roads that we're going to convert from gravel to pavement, there'll be other people wanting similar things done. So it would be nice to have traffic counts for the roads that we're doing, so we'll be able to identify why we're picking one over the other.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and I guess through you, and to the members of the audience, and thank you to Mr. Spring for bringing this forward, and Councillor Corbell for all the work that they've done. While it would be amazing, and our job would be so much easier if we got to say yes to every single resident who had a request. We received a report early in our term about work for the 1%, and it is difficult when we want to make everyone's life in Springwater as good as possible. I agree with Councillor Hanna in that we have roads needs studies, and that if our council is going to make decisions to pave this road or pave this road based on requests of residents, we're entering into a precedent that I don't think we can uphold. I think that as we move forward with our asset management, as we move forward with the roads needs study, in our term of council, this information will be provided to us. I also believe that while the comment was made that we're spending money upgrading existing roads, I truly believe that we are spending money preserving the roads that we have. If we had the unlimited resources to pave every single road, that could be an option, but I do believe that we need to take care of what we have before we go and add to what our annual operating expenses are. As far as moving forward, I believe that the report did indicate the costs, the additional costs for this. The question I would have is, in asking for more information, are we suggesting that we as a council choose which roads are not included in order to include this road? Or are we simply, sorry, this sounds horrible, but we have reports from consultants, and if we're not going to listen to an asset management, we're not going to listen to a roads need study, I would argue that we shouldn't be hiring consultants to provide us with advice if we're not going to listen to the advice of the experts. I understand that this can continue to go. I think that we have made commitments and we have approved a budget, we've approved a work plan, and we have approved tenders, and to make any adjustments at this point, we're simply going to be taking work that's been done. So let's say, for example, Hendry Road or whichever road is going to be done, if we take that out of the budget to put this road in, the people that live on that road are going to be sitting before us asking why we chose that one over another one. So while I apologize to have to look people in the eyes to say it, we cannot appease every member, and it is a difficult job to say, but we do have an opportunity every year to do another budget and to do another work plan for that year. And I think that a decision of council was made, and while it would be nice to say yes to everyone, I think that at this point, I will not be able to support putting this back on to our staff to continue to find additional resources to move this road forward in 2019, but I am happy to consider it for the 2020 budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a couple of clarifying points. The roads need studies. They do in no way, shape, or form suggest or make recommendation, as far as I could see from those reports, in relationship to conversions from gravel to pavement. They assess the roadways, they score them based on their criteria, and that's where the score comes from. They're not going to make a recommendation on making a road from gravel to pavement. The other issue I'd like to just address a little bit, and I understand exactly where Deputy Mayor Coghlan is coming from, but the other side of the coin, I think, is that people who are already living on paved rural roads that have some potholes in that, they might be able to wait one more year if they understand that the intent is to try and give the same thing to some other residents who are living on gravel roads. And I have the entire list of gravel roads within Springwater Township here, and I'm more than happy to read them all over and the years that they were supposed to be looked at. So it's not just Floss Road 10 West, but even going back to 2011, if we say that they stopped doing conversions in 2011, that's 8 years ago, folks. And now we're asking these people to wait another 10 according to our 10-year capital plan. And I think that's unfair. There has to be a way to try and squeak one or two of these roads in every year. The cost for maintaining unpaved gravel roads is 3 times almost for maintaining a paved one. The only other point I would like to make is that, actually 2 points. The roads I would be most concerned about, and I think most people would be able to appreciate this, is not roads that are dead ends, because there very well could be folks living on those roads who really aren't interested in a paved roadway, because only the residents are using that particular stretch. But when we talk about Floss Road 10 West, which is paved from Highway 93 to Highway 27, and then unpaved from Highway 27 to County Road 29, and then paved again from County Road 29 all the way into Wasaga Beach at the Walmart there pretty well. You can go straight in. And we also have a few other roads that are the same. If you look at the 6th, it's paved from County Road 27 to Elliott, and then it's gravel to for a big long stretch through there, and then it resumes pavement just before it gets to County Road 29. Again, if you look at Floss Road 8, it's paved all the way from the baseline to County Road 27. It's paved all the way from County Road 27 all the way to County Road 29, and then it becomes not asphalt, gravel again from County Road 29 to Vigo. And those are the roads that I think we really have to try and address. And if we did this in the right fashion, I'm pretty sure council would be able to complete all of these conversions within the next 10 years, as well as try and maintain our other hard tops. And that's the point I'm trying to make. I'm happy to hear that CAO Brindley did allude to some other funding pockets. Apparently there is a tax gas refund that we weren't expecting this year. And I think maybe that might be something that might be able to address at least the shortfall for a couple of roads. Like maybe we could put that stretch of Ushers Road back in and put Victoria Road back in along with Floss Road 10 West and be able to do that because the infrastructure includes roads for those particular pockets. So I don't think it's an unreasonable request, and it's not something that came up yesterday. This is something that's been ongoing for some time, and it's just not being done.
Okay, thank you. We need a seconder for the motion, and I'll read the motion so that the report now before council be referred back to staff in order that the original motion C206C 219 be complied with as to the inclusion of options which would include the paving of Floss Road 10 West within the 219 capital budget. Do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Hanna? Further discussion? Any further discussion with respect to that? Yes, Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just have one question. Councillor Cabral, when you say included in the 2019 capital budget, will that include the new pockets of funding that the township has received? I just want to make sure that those monies will be considered.
I'm happy to include that in my motion, but I think I'd just feel more comfortable if it went back and we saw what kind of plan staff can come up with where it might be included, and if they allude to some pockets of money being available to help offset the cost and include it, that'd be fine. I recall that when we first made the motion, CAO Brindley did allude to the fact that there were awards that were going to be awarded and some monies were already going to be spent. And at that time, we did speak to the fact that if it happened in 2020, that might be suitable too. But if it's able to be completed in 2019 as it was originally scheduled in the 6-year capital plan, I'd be more happy with that, to be quite honest with you. And then it would be done and over with.
CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just on that point exactly, that Councilor Moore brought up is that the purity of that motion itself only addressing the 219 funding, I think would handcuff staff. We would have to be given a little more latitude in how we present the report to council.
I will not support this motion because I feel the position we're in this year to try to cram it into 219 is just, we're too far down the road fiscally in 219 to try to cram this in. I know we've been looking at the extra funding we have, and I know staff is coming forward with some possibilities with respect to it so certainly a more detailed look at it in our 220 budgeting would be good for all of us at council, and I certainly would want to do that. But I don't see cramming it into this year's budget, given that we have executed on that budget to a significant extent. Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think we're going to have a problem with that because the original motion was not complied with by staff. That's why we're having to make this motion again to send it back to them.
Yeah, I understand. So the motion stands. We have a mover and a seconder. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. And my last point, during the budget process, and this is just from memory, I believe the Public Works ask was about 2.4 million. If I can ask for just clarification on that. The original, when the budget was prepared and presented to our council as to, in order to complete everything for 2019, it would be about 2.4 million, is that correct? A round number is fine.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. I don't have that at my fingertips, to be honest with you. I'd have to report back.
Councillor
with
Cabral
it.
might have it, but I believe it was just one, we gave just a little more than half. It was, we asked for 2 point something and we gave them 1 point something. And the point I'm making is, the goal of this council is to keep taxes and to keep operations and to keep the maintenance, to keep Springwater moving forward. But unless we're just willing to raise taxes or increase operations, to me, it's, we can't have both. We had to make cuts. We weren't able to fund, in order to keep the 2%, we weren't able to give Public Works everything they asked for. So there had to be projects removed. And,
Okay,
with all due-
I'm gonna call the vote on this. I think we've had good, wholesome discussion. Is this a point you haven't made before, Councillor Cabral?
It wasn't a point that I'd already made. Oh, actually, it's in reference, thank you, Mayor Allen, just in reference to Deputy Mayor Coghlan. As far as road infrastructure was concerned, I think the only two that got removed was Usher's Road, a stretch there, and Victoria. We didn't take anything else from the roads, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, well, we can have that discussion offline. So, okay, last comment, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Mine will be short. I'm caught in the middle. I agree on both sides, but I do think that we should agree and wait to the 2020 budget. We are too far into this year. Not to say that I don't agree with Mr. Spring and getting that done. Could we took it out of before? But I'm thinking right now, let's move on, wait till 2020 and add it into that budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm calling the vote. All in favor with the motion?
Point of order.
Councillor Cabral?
How do we resolve the previous motion that was not complied with?
That's what this motion is addressing.
Okay, and if this motion doesn't pass,
Then
it
we go-
remains unresolved.
No, it's a determination by council with respect to that point, and then we go back to the motion of accepting or receiving and accepting the recommendation of this point, 9.10.
All right.
Okay, everybody clear on the motion? All those in favor? 2, 3, opposed? So, that's
A
defeated.
recorded vote, please.
A recorded vote was requested by Councillor Cabral. Once I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Cabral?
Yes.
Councillor Hanna?
Yes.
Councillor Chapman?
No.
Councillor Moore?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
No?
And Mayor Allen?
No.
A tie vote, which means that the motion is lost.
Okay, so moving on to the motion, which was moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Chapman, that the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the gravel conversions of township roads dated June 5, 2019 be received, and that township delay all gravel conversions to hard surface roads until the completion of the updated asset management plan. Questions, discussions? Councillor Cabral?
I would ask that that motion be amended.
And what is the amendment?
That the report be received, but the recommendation to wait until the asset management plan not be included.
And do you have a seconder for that? Councillor Hanna? Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you, Marilyn. While we're waiting through you, the first phase of the asset management plan is, from what I understand, to be roads. When would the anticipated date of that be?
Either Director Schmidt or Director Coleman, please.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. At this point, we don't have a timeline. As you are aware, we have just recently hired someone to lead us down that path. We will be going out for an RFP for software. We have to gather all of our data. I would suspect it would be at least a year, if not more, before that's complete.
Thank you, Marilyn, and understanding that, I have no problem supporting that amendment. Also, if it's just a friendly amendment not to include it, I'm fine with that as well, as I do think that this needs to be discussed during the 2020 budget deliberations.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, we understand the amendment, that the motion now before council be amended as follows, deleting the second paragraph. All those in favor? Carried. So I have to read that again. So we're back to the motion moved by Moore, seconded by Chapman, that the report from the Director of Public Works regarding gravel conversions of township roads dated June 5, 2019 be received. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Minutes review. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the approval of the minutes? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Moore. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented, and that's the minutes of the regular meeting of council of May 15, 2019. Any questions, discussions? All those in favor? Carried. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the receipt of the minutes of the boards and committees? Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore. That the minutes of boards and committees and other organizations listed herein be received as information. That's the minutes of the Elmville BIA, April 18, 2019, and the minutes of the Heritage Committee, April 23, 2019. Any questions or points with respect to these? All in favor? Carried. Correspondence items. Item 7, correspondence and information items. May I have a mover and a seconder to get those on the table, please? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. Of those, I think we're going to have comment. I'd like to have comment on 5, 6, and 7. Any other councillor want to have? Yes, Councillor Hannah.
3 and 4 through to 7, please.
Okay. So let's just go. Starting at 3. Anybody else? Well, I think it's all of them, I think. Well, it's all starting at 3, right? Nobody wanted 1 or 2. 3, Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and let me say that it's a report penned by yourself, and I think you made some excellent points in that report. Just a couple of things I'd like to point out, mostly for the benefit of people that haven't been on council before, but when we talk about planning and development within Springwater, I have no complaints or problems. I think our staff do a great job, but I believe I have a duty just to mention that in the past there's been some problems with planning, not because of the township, but because of the way the province, and if you like the county, has sort of overruled what our planning department has tried to do. And the first thing that comes to mind, of course, is the Midhurst secondary plan, the special rule that allowed that to create by the province. And for those who aren't aware, there was 1,400, I think, 80 people who signed a petition. There was another, I believe it was 40,000 people online that signed a petition. A number of people that were planning experts had also said that the Midhurst secondary plan did not make good planning sense. And then when we go forward and we approve the development, if you like, or with the stage it's at, we also had questions about the extra population of 20,000. The Springwater Township, our planning, we suggested that it wasn't necessary. The county overruled us on that as well and added some population. So my point being is that, well, the township tries to do a good job with planning. We get a lot of interference from province or county. When I read your report, I think it's on page 2, it states, Springwater continues to be robust, sustainable, and talks about good planning. I think we have good planning, but we have interference, and I'm just suggesting that it would have been better, from my point of view, and as I say, I think I have a duty to point this out, that had we also included to the province that while we try to do good planning, we get interference from upper tier management.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor. First of all, credit is due to the CAO Brinley for coming up with the first draft, and then he and I reviewed it and tweaked some changes. I believe CAO Brinley, was this not sent to councillors for comment? So we welcomed any and all comments from councillors before finalization of it, and but I appreciate the comments. Thank you. Okay, did anybody want to discuss 4, the letter from Town of Halton? Or did you did, rejected? Or, sorry, Councillor Hannah?
Oh, thank you. I believe we'll be speaking more about Bill 108, is that correct?
Yes, but so nobody wanted to make points on 4, is that correct?
If we're talking about Bill 108, that's correct.
Yes,
No,
yes. So, 5 is the pre-hearing LPAT conference on Carson Trails Estates. Director Spagno, can you just give us a brief update on what happened on June 4th in that pre-hearing, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. That represented the first pre-hearing for the appeal for the Carson Trail Estates subdivision. It was an opportunity for anybody who had an interest in the file to submit the status that they had requested. From my recollection, there was, I believe, 4 or 5 parties that were present who had either indicated participant or party status and wanting to be involved in the process. The key point that forms out of that hearing is that the next hearing will be on December 9th, 2019. What was introduced by the appellants was the desire to submit a concept plan for council's consideration to fuel future instruction as to how to proceed through the next process. And
Okay.
that concludes the update.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments with respect to that? Okay, moving on to 6 and 7 reports. Rather interesting. Director Schmidt, can you give us just an overview and your thoughts on that before we turn it to council for any further questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So essentially, as council may be aware, through Bill 108, there's approximately 15 different acts that are being amended, if you will. Some substantially, some minor amendments. One of those being the Development Charges Act. And so essentially what the bill is proposing is a number of changes as it relates to the Development Charges Act. One of them being that the bill is proposing to remove all soft services. So soft services being your Parks and Rec and recreational type facilities or services, as well as library services and administrative type studies. Those would all be removed from the Development Charges Act and essentially be put into what they're calling a community benefits charge, which would be imposed under the Planning Act. In addition to that, they're also proposing that for non-residential development, as I understand it, that payments would be in installments over a 6-year time frame. So that's a much different change than what currently is under the Act, and would obviously provide some or require municipalities likely to look at additional resources to manage the administration of those installments. In addition, they're looking at, as I mentioned, the community benefit charge, whereby essentially all those soft services would be considered under the Planning Act, and that a percentage of land value, if you will, would be considered as part of that charge as opposed to the current regime. Keep in mind that a lot of this would turn the Development Charges Act essentially on its head. I think both consultants have provided their comments. Further to that, the area treasurers in Simcoe County met on May 24th with Watson's to get a better understanding of this and the proposed changes. To be quite honest with you, there was more questions provided by the consultant than answers. Until regulations are provided, which in my understanding isn't likely until later this year, the impacts to the township are somewhat at a high level at this stage, I can't really comment on the specifics, because until regulations are passed, we really don't know how we're going to transition from the current regime to this new regime. So I'll be happy to answer or try to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you for filling that out for us a bit. Any further questions or comments with respect to this? Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I have concerns with this, and I know there's nothing we can do about it. It's a provincial bill. The development charges is something we depend on when our development takes place. So our current residents aren't impacted by the costs of infrastructure and soft services and so on. The way this reads is that, the way I interpret it from the consultants, is that it will be deferring the development charges that we can collect, and will be debt financing, will be into debt and so on. And so I have concerns, as there's some other items later on that are asking for 5-year extensions. Given that, not that I'm suggesting we should be moving those things forward, but given those extensions and given the flavor of the government making changes, I'm concerned that by delivering or delaying the need to start, I guess, holding more accountability, if you like, for the developers to get development charges forward before the province makes more changes, that we're going to be putting our current residents to do a financial impact because we can't collect the development charges.
Thank you. Okay, we have a mover and a seconder for the correspondence and information items listed herein being received. So yes, we have it, Coghlan Cabral already. Thank you, councillors. So the first is a letter from Simcoe County Road Supervisors, read the trade show, June 2020. A letter from Simcoe County, Muskoka District Health Unit re-opioid strategy 2018 status update. Letter from the Mayor, Don Allen, to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, re-regional government review. Letter from Town of Halton Hills to Premier Doug Ford regarding Bill 108. Notice of pre-hearing conference, Carson Trails Estates, Inc. Letter from Watson Associates Limited to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, re-Bill 108, and letter from Hempson Consulting Limited to the Province of Ontario, re-Bill 108. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we are at 8.2, which, no, sorry, 8.1, which is, can we have a mover and a seconder to get that on the table, please? Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Coghlan. And this relates to the repeal of the heritage designation, McDonald House, and we welcome our Deputy Clerk, Sasha Helmke, to speak to this. So maybe if you could just give us an overview and the highlights of that meeting and the recommendation, please, Deputy Clerk Helmke.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So if you remember at Council's April 17th meeting, the request to repeal the heritage designation by the property owner, Karen McDonald, was first presented to Council. We provided information regarding their request. It relates to the insurance premiums on the property being very high and too costly. Her reason is the hand-hewn logs that were used to build the home. It is a heritage designated home. The hand-hewed logs are designated features of the home. So she made a request to Council. You guys referred the request to the Heritage Advisory Committee. They met on they met at their May meeting. They reviewed the request from the property owner, and then they made the following recommendation that you can see in the report. The recommendation is not to repeal the heritage designation based on many different features, specifically relating it back to the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sports information pamphlet on insurance and heritage properties, that the designated features of the property remain intact, and that there's opportunities for the property owner to receive heritage tax refunds and grant opportunities through the community improvement plan as well. So Council has 90 days from receipt of the property owner's request to make a decision. That 90 days is up on July 3rd. If Council doesn't make a decision within that 90-day period, then it goes back to that they've approved the the request, it reverts back to that. So council's been provided with two options tonight. Option one is to not repeal the heritage designation bylaw. We also included a caveat in there that the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport has recommended that other municipalities have used, because there has been questions about insurance and property owners' concern about insurance in heritage properties. So we did include the clause that in the matter of accidental, partial, or total loss of a building on a property designated under the Ontario Heritage Act, the Council of the Township of Springwater supports the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sports info sheet, Insurance and Heritage Properties, dated August 2012, in that Council will not require the property owner to replace, restore, or replicate any lost heritage attributes of the property. So the Ontario Heritage Act does not require property owners to replace any of the heritage features if it's lost in a fire, and our designation bylaw doesn't require the property owner to do that. And then option two is that you repeal the heritage designation bylaw.
Thank you, Deputy Clerk. Questions, comments? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I read it over fairly thoroughly, and I noticed that the property owner had a number of opportunities to provide additional information and make representation, and if I read it correctly, nothing was forthcoming, just the initial request.
Deputy Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral, that is correct. The property owner has communicated with me and is open to communication, but did not attend the Heritage Advisory Committee meeting, did not attend the April meeting that the request came to, and did not attend tonight's meeting. We did offer them to be a delegation or to publicly speak during public participation, but they did not choose at the time to take those opportunities up.
Thank you. Other follow-up?
Thank you. I also was wondering with respect, I think there was some documentation provided to them with respect to insurance, as well as insurance information asked back to see where this discrepancy in the amount of insurance was coming from, and that was not received either.
Deputy Clerk?
Through you, Mayor Allen, to Councillor Cabral, that is correct. We did ask if their insurance company could provide us with a letter just stating what the heritage designation meant in regards to the insurance premiums. The property owner did advise that the insurance company wasn't willing to put anything in writing. We did communicate throughout this whole process with the property owner, supplied any information that we were providing to council, even had pre-discussions before the request actually came to council in April. And then when I finalized the report, I gave them the opportunity to read the report as well and provide any additional comments that they would want me to include.
Any other, Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. I thought it was an excellent report, lots of good detail, and I think once the applicant understands that there's cost savings from the insurance, and also they can apply for, I believe it's a 40% reduction in their property taxes, this would give them an opportunity to maintain the fiscal level they have now, and still maintain the heritage status, so I would go with option one.
Yes, Deputy Clerk.
Through you, Mayor Allen, I just want to make a point that yes, they are eligible to participate in the heritage tax refund. If they choose to do so, they will just have to enter a new agreement with the township, because the previous agreement was with the previous owner, and this property sold in 2018. So unlike other, like a conservation easement agreement, it doesn't go with the property. When there's a sale, then the new owner just enters into that agreement with the township, which is a standard agreement that a few of our heritage properties participate in.
Thank you. Any other final comments, Councillor Cabral?
I also was thinking some of the reasoning behind it didn't make much sense to me in respect of the value of the property and what it was insured for, based on the type of property it was, because whether the heritage designation applies or not, that specific value would exist no matter what. So I don't understand how she would save any money on insurance if the designation was repealed. And then again, as Councillor Hanna says, she would no longer benefit from the tax reduction under the program. So I would also support option one.
Okay, so we're moving forward with the motion to support option one. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Deputy Clerk. We're going to take a 5-minute break, bio break, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks. resume, please? Or is that okay? Okay, we're on item 8.1 in the action reports. Request to repeal 8.2, parkland dedication fee review, site plan control. Can I get a mover and a second to get this on the table, please? Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. And so, I'll start by Director Spagnol to just give us a bit of an overview on this one and maybe provide an example of what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. The report being considered by Council tonight is with respect to Section 42 of the Planning Act, which enables the municipality to implement a bylaw to require that through site plan control, to require that 2% of land value for commercial industrial lands or up to 5% of land value for residential lands be paid for development or redevelopment through the site plan process. What is currently before council is 3 options. The first option would be to direct staff to establish a bylaw to require parkland dedication, which would include cash in lieu of parkland in the percentages that I referenced earlier, for residential, commercial, and industrial properties. Option 2 would establish a bylaw to require parkland dedication or cash in lieu through the site plan process for only residential development and redevelopment. And option 3 would maintain the status quo in that the township would not require any payment for parkland or any dedication of parkland. The key difference between option 1 and option 2 is that option 2 would require that there would be a cash in lieu payment or parkland dedication for residential, commercial, and industrial lands. And the difference between option 2 is that it would only require a parkland dedication or cash in lieu payment for residential purposes. The questions come up as to why would it be appropriate to require cash in lieu or parkland for commercial purposes. There's a few arguments to this in favor for or arguments against. One argument in favor for requiring such dedications and payments is that in certain areas and neighborhoods, you have people that utilize park spaces in close proximity to commercial development, where there is a stress or a requirement to provide open space lands in those neighborhoods. So for example, you might have a commercial development with an open space block across the road. The commercial development benefits from the open space, and the patrons utilize that open space to provide for leisure and things of that nature. The argument against the first option is also that it could be considered as an impediment to drawing commercial development and additional cost to the development community if they want to establish commercial businesses in certain areas. As a part of this report, staff is recommending that option 1 be implemented, which is the requirement through the site plan process for staff to prepare a bylaw for parkland dedication for residential, commercial, and industrial properties. I'm open to answer any questions.
Thank you. Comments, questions with respect to this? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Director Spagnol. I'm just looking at the chart here, and I see that we'd be in the same ballpark pretty much as everybody else with respect to what they're doing. My only other question would be, and I read in the report, this bylaw would only apply to properties at the initial state, not subsequent transfers?
Director Spagnol?
Through you, Mayor Allen and Councillor Cabral. This bylaw would apply to new site plan development where they haven't paid into the parkland dedication fee. So that's correct, it's for new transfers.
Others? Councillor Hanna?
Option 1 works for me, please.
Okay, so, yes, Councillor Cabral?
Sorry, thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm just curious, does this play in at all to Bill 108 and what they're doing there? I'm just curious more than anything else, Director Spagnol.
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through to Councillor Cabral. In essence, it could, but we don't know at this point. So based on what is currently in the Planning Act. We're bringing this forward so that we can move forward to establish the bylaw, but we're waiting to see what results from Bill 108.
Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, and we're moving forward on option 1. All in favor? Carried. 9.1, action reports, consent agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get this on the table? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Chapman, and we have, anybody like to pull any of these? Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'd like to pull 9.1 and 9.12.
9.1.
9.9 and 9.12.
Okay. And anybody else? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, I'm looking for clarification first. The rest of them, I guess, would be 9 point, well, all the rest of them that deal with development there.
Okay.
There's three
Yeah.
that I.
We're going to get, we'll get Director Spagnol to give a bit
Okay,
of a
thank you.
comment. Yep, thank you. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Could we pull 911, please?
9/11, 9/9, and 9/12. 9/10. Oh, we already did that. Okay. Yes, yes, it is. So, before we start on the others, Director Spagnol, maybe you could give us a comment, preamble with respect to 9.2 through 9.8.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just to clarify, are we speaking also with respect to the official plan amendment there for the Ontario Limited number?
Well, that's a bit of a different thing. That's not an extension.
That's
So you're right,
correct.
you're right, 9.2 to 9.7.
Thank you for the clarification. Council has reports which are in response to requests for extension of draft plan approval for a number of subdivisions within the Midhurst secondary plan area. The request for extension is for a 5-year extension, which is consistent with the original approval that was provided by the Ontario Municipal Board in 2014. The staff is recommending that the extensions be granted or endorsed through this process, and that the county and LPAT be notified, as this was originally an LPAT approval, who was formerly the OMB. In relation to some of the questions that were raised earlier in the meeting, there have been conditions, just off the top of my head, related to archaeological clearances, and in addition to that, there has been considerable work that has been completed with respect to the environmental assessment process, which currently sits with the ministry. On top of that, there's also been considerable work completed with respect to master drainage agreement, or master drainage plan, which is also required as key conditions of approval as part of those subdivisions. In addition to that work, there are also conditions of approval that require that development charges be reviewed and that financial agreements be finalized to deal with upfront costs associated with infrastructure. And it is on the basis of the complexity and the number of conditions that are sitting before or sitting within those approvals that staff is recommending that the 5-year extensions be endorsed by council.
Okay, before I open it up to Council CEO Brindley.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And to add to the comments from our planner, contrary to our delegation, it's actually normal to, at the onset of a new subdivision, to have longer periods of time for approval. It's when a subdivision lingers for too long that we start pulling the reins and start reducing that time to, say, 3 years and then 2 years to 1 year. Council has this and previous councils have dealt with subdivisions in the past where we have given 1 year because those have been sitting around for 10, 20 years. And I would suspect that 5 years from now, this council might have a discussion about maybe a more limited time. But it's actually normal or common for actually having longer periods of time at the beginning. And then if this subdivision would, say, be here 10, 15 years from now, then you start pulling the reins and say, you know, less time, because we really want to see at that time progress on the file. So it's actually normal to approve a time period of this length at this juncture within the processing of these subdivisions.
Thank you. Councillor comments? Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. Originally, there was a 5-year extension for this when it first started. I can tell you, I don't think anybody that's opposed to mid or secondary plan would object to it being extended for 5 years. My concern is that we are going to set a precedent, and the staff report even indicates that by going to 5 years, which could be setting a precedent that we're going to be extending requests more over what's been the norm, and the recent norm anyway is like 1-year extensions. So that would be my concern, that by going to 5 years, we're establishing something that future requests will be coming forward asking for longer extensions that maybe we don't agree to. The other thing I like about the 1 year, by only doing 1 year, is we get periodic updates. We'll know what the status is when it comes to the conditions that have been made. If you read all these different reports, some of the developments are 150 conditions, other 170 conditions, and so on. The question that was asked by Mr. Strong earlier tonight was, what are the status of those conditions and where do they stand right now? I'm not sure, I don't know if anybody else knows what the conditions are and which ones have been made so far. If we do it 1 year, maybe we can try to pursue that and have that updated information so we can make informed decisions going forward. So that's my concern mostly. The other is, again, we go back to 108 and the development charges. By extending for 5 years, are we leaving ourselves in a position where we could be impacted by 108 or whatever other changes the provincial government comes forward with, for us trying to collect development charges to offset the cost of this and other developments?
Thank you. Director Spagno?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through you to Councillor Hannah. With respect to the conditions of approval, I spoke of the EA and the work that's been completed for the EA. If you read through the ranging of 150 conditions to 170 conditions, the majority of those conditions are related to the environmental assessment process, which is currently sitting with the ministry. So, you know, the expectation for when an approval comes forward from the ministry is that there will be a significant number of conditions that will be satisfied. At the point when conditions are being satisfied to where there's a necessity for pre-servicing agreements or there's the necessity for development to start moving forward, Council will be getting an update by way of a report from staff as to where conditions lie and what has been satisfied and addressed. So really, in essence, what the 5-year extension is intended to do is to provide sufficient time for the developers to move through the process and address conditions of approval. In instances, as CAO Brindley has indicated, in instances where there's been development that has been sitting on the books, where it's been dormant, there has not been any movement or any action to move things forward to address conditions, staff has essentially brought reports forward to recommend that a 1-year extension be provided to push the developer to move quicker on addressing those conditions. The second point I'd like to make about Bill 108, actually there's two. Firstly, Bill 108 has not been approved. We are currently dealing with, and the township is currently dealing with draft plan conditions that are in place and that have been approved through a municipal board process. And the key point to that as well is that there are key conditions which require the municipality to work through its development charge bylaw and to also deal with the finances associated with development, which is also backed by the secondary plan policy. So to my mind, you've got conditions of approval that are in place which require that work to be done. And to, at this point, not allow for, to even consider a 1-year extension, to my mind, would be unreasonable because of the amount of work that has to be completed in order to address the conditions of approval. If this was a one-off subdivision where there wasn't so many conditions and the complexities of what has to be done wasn't involved in the process, I would suggest 1 year would be appropriate, but given the number of conditions and the complexity of the conditions and the work that has to be completed, it's in my opinion that 5 years is appropriate and reasonable.
And as you state, any significant occurrences as we move along, there would be reports coming back to staff, and we'd be fully informed.
That is correct, Mayor Allen.
Follow on?
Thank you. I guess my response to that would be that it wouldn't matter if it's 1 year or 5 year or 10 years. The developer can still proceed and do what they're doing regardless of what the extension period is. But a question I know this could be sensitive, so I'm not sure how to ask it, but I believe there's some appeals to the current development charges that have been assessed to some of this development, and maybe we could hear from our Director of Finance on that. I don't know.
Okay, and before we do that, I think we're having enough discussion that we're pulling these items 9.2 through 9.7, and we're in the process of discussing them. 9.3 to 9.7, we're in the process of discussing those separately. So, Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. So, with regards to the development charges appeal, yes, there is an appeal on the township's current DC background study and bylaw. We have had preliminary discussions with the parties that did submit an appeal. Unfortunately, with Bill 108, it throws a bit of a wrench into things, and so we are trying to work through those changes and try to understand what those impacts could be. So we have had some preliminary discussions as early as, or as late as, I guess a week or two ago, with our solicitor and our consultants. So we are working through it, and again, once we have a better understanding of what the true impacts of 108 will be on the township, then we'll be reporting back to council and hopefully have some agreement with the parties that are currently appealing the bylaw.
One more follow-on.
Thank you. Is it appropriate for me to suggest that while we allow these extensions, we change it from a 5 year to a 1 year as a friendly amendment?
Well, it's possible to propose an amendment, yes. Okay, are you proposing that amendment for all of those? Do we have a seconder? We have to deal with this first. With which? Oh, sorry, okay. So effectively, we pulled that, we've discussed it, but we're still dealing, we'll get back to that, okay? Okay, so we're back to the main motion, which now basically looks to accept 9.2, 9.8, and 9.13. Any discussions with respect to those, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to make a comment prior to. I mean, our particular terms, 5 years is a long way off.
No, we're going to discuss that separately. So
okay.
We're moving on to dealing with 9.2, 9.8, and 9.13 to return to this because we pulled them separately. Any discussions with respect to those before we vote on those? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, so we're back to okay, so we have to do these separately then. So we're at 9.3, and we need a mover and seconder for each one of these. So as we run through them, Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. So we're at 9.3, that the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding Township File SU 21301, Bell Rustor Coots Plan of Subdivision, request for extension of draft plan approval dated June 5, 2019 be received, and that council does not object to a 5-year extension of draft plan approval, and the County of Simcoe and Local Planning Appeals Tribunal be so notified. So we're looking for an amendment to that, moved by Councillor Hanna and seconded by Councillor Cabral. And the amendment is changing the 5 to 1 year. Discussion, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and through you to Director Spagnol. During when you were speaking to these, you said that you did not, in your professional opinion, did not feel that 1 year would be sufficient. Can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Through you to Deputy Mayor Coughlin. The reason why I stated that it wouldn't be sufficient is because there's a number of conditions which require decisions of various tiers of government. So currently we've got an EA that requires a ministry of approval. We could potentially have, and we most likely will have to take a look at our development charge bylaw, where this council is going to have to consider revisions to that bylaw to reflect any services that will be required through the development. Quite frankly, it would be impossible to go and meet those conditions within 1 year, just based on the time that it takes to move things through an approval process, through public consultations and things of that nature. Not to mention that there also needs to be certain ministry approvals that are required as well, aside from the EA, related to the clearance of other conditions of approval that will all flow from an approved EA from the ministry. So to my mind, 1 year is not, it's not reasonable, and it's, I would say, impossible to go satisfy the conditions within a 1 year time frame, just based on the timelines that I've indicated for different approvals.
Director Spagnol, I take your point, and I think we've heard from some of the councillors that they want to have more frequent report back than 5 years. What would be reasonable between 1 and 5 from your perspective to be realistic and yet accomplish the goal to have more frequent reporting back? Would it be 2? Would it be 3? Would it be 4?
Mayor Allen, I think my submission about the 5 year extension is that that's a reasonable time frame. If council would like a regular update quarterly as to where things sit from a condition of approval standpoint, staff can provide that. The reason why I'm saying that that's a reasonable time frame is because that was the initial time frame that was approved by the OMB. And in addition to that, this is the first request that this township has dealt with respect to the extension. In addition to that, the only thing that I'd like to note as well is that because this is sitting before and because it was an approval through the OMB process, it is important to note that council's endorsement for a varied extension or time frame could be considered, but at the end of the day, the decision will ultimately be made by the Ontario Municipal Board alongside with the county. So that's also another consideration as well. So it can be disputed if it's contested or if for some reason the county goes with a 1 year and the developers object.
Okay, other discussion? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Given the province's changes and their Bill 108 and numerous other changes, and that our council really has 3 more years left, I'm wondering if there is an appetite for a 3-year extension in between the 1 and the 5. I think there would give folks a lot more time and the other ministries involved to get their reports in. It's 3 years, and we would still be present to receive those reports at that time. Just wondering. Thanks.
Okay, so that is a friendly amendment to the amendment. What's the proper way of handling that, clerk, please?
Thank you, through you. Because this is Councillor Hanna's amendment, he could make that change if he wishes not to make the change. If this motion were to not go forward, then you could propose an amendment for a 3-year.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I wouldn't mind hearing from the other councillors as whether they think that it should be 1, 2, or 3 as well.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I'm of the mind that I think 5 years, to be honest with you, they can easily come back and reply and get another extension every time it expires anyway. So I kind of feel that 1 to 3 years would be adequate, maybe 2 years to 3 years, only because, as Councillor Moore has indicated, we would be the ones that would be reviewing them. And also, with respect to Councillor Hanna, I think he's right on the money when he speaks to the ambiguity we're having right now with provincial legislation in Bill 108. So in my mind I think it should be a shorter period of time too.
So Councillor Hanna, 3 years?
I could live with 3 years. I think we'll still be here,
Okay.
God willing.
Okay, so friendly amendment agreed to by the mover and seconder to 3 years. Any further discussion before we vote on the amendment? So we changed the 5-year extension to 3-year extension. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Now, can we make the assumption that that applies for 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.6, 9.7? Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Through you, Marilyn, to Clerk Chaperon, can we do that? I think we have to deal with an amendment to each.
No, I'm saying that, but I'm just saying, can the same, instead of introducing and going through this discussion, is it plausible? We'll have to deal with each one, I appreciate that, but let's try each one.
So now we have to vote again on the main motion.
Oh, yes, we're back at the main motion. Okay. That the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding Township File SU 213001 Bell Rustor Coots Plan of Subdivision Request for Extension Draft Plan Approval dated June 5th, 2019 be received, and that Council does not object to a 3-year extension draft plan approval, and that the County of Simcoe and Local Planning Appeals Tribunal be so notified. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we need a mover and a seconder for 9.3. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral. 9.4, sorry. That the report from the Director of Planning Services regarding Township File SU 213004 Mixed Plan of Subdivision request for extension of draft plan approval dated June 5th, 2019 be received, and that the Township does not object to a 3-year extension of draft plan. This is, so we have to propose amendment? Okay. Okay, this is a 5-year extension, and that the same notifications happen. So, who's putting forward an amendment to the, Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Hanna, which is the same motion, replacing 5-year with 3-year. All in favor? Carried. And reading the same original motion with changing 5-year to 3 years. All those in favor? Carried. Next is the same type of report regarding the Hickling Plan of Subdivision request for extension, the draft plan, and a 5-year extension and the same notification. Does anybody have an amendment to that? Councillor Cabral and Deputy Mayor Coughlin, and I assume that's from 5-year to 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. That takes us back to, we have a mover, you have the main motion, mover and a seconder for that. Councillor Chapman, Councillor Moore, that everything is the same except the 5-year goes to 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. 9.5, 9.6. 9.6 is the same thing with respect, a mover and a seconder to get that on. Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coughlin. And this is regarding the SU 213006 A&R Hickling Plan of Subdivision. Same thing, 5-year and the same notification and an amendment. Councillor Moore, Councillor Hanna, replacing the 5-year to 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. And back to the main motion, which is reducing the 5-year to a 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. And finally, 9.7, which deals with SU 213-007 Rome Plan of Subdivision, and that's reducing from 5-year to 3-year. A mover and a seconder, Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. And the amendment for that is Councillor Hannah, Councillor Moore, from 5-year to 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. And back to the original motion, which incorporates the reduction of 5-year to 3-year. All those in favor? Carried. Man, oh man. Okay. Moving on to, did we do 9.8? Yeah, no, 9.9, which is temporary road closure. Councillor Chapman. I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the table. So, Councillor Moore and Councillor Cabral, and turn it to you, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. My motion for the amendment is to add that the Column Road be marked with a signage stating local traffic only during the same period through the Rocketus concert.
Okay. And a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Coughlin. Discussion. Councillor Cabral.
I do have some discussion on it. It's been tabled, am I correct?
Yes.
And I'm glad to see that the map's coming up. My concerns are with respect to the anticipated costs associated with it. They're not huge, but at the same time, I think that those are monies that Springwater Township really has no need in expending in this particular case. And the reason I say that is because, give some reference to council and the audience, the location of the Edenvale Aerodrome is located on the south side of Highway 26. The distance from Edenvale to the intersection of Highway 26 and 15/16 side road is 860 meters, and according to the Clearview traffic plan, this roadway will be closed by Clearview Township, so the number there is 860 meters. The distance from Edenvale to the intersection of Highway 26 and the 1213 side road is 953 meters. This roadway remains open, and it's a little bit further along, but it remains open. The distance from Edenvale to the intersection of Highway 26 and Rainbow Valley Road is 1.54 kilometers, and it's recommended by staff to be closed. Another thing to keep in mind is the distance from the intersection of Highway 26 and Rainbow Valley Road to Rainbow at Atkinson is 960 meters, just about a kilometer. So there would be a kilometer stretch of Rainbow Valley Road that is going to be closed. Rainbow Valley Road and Cullum Road will remain open east, west, and north. And I say also east on Atkinson Road because there's a right-of-way there that's not shown on, that is shown on the map actually, and there's plenty of room for people to park their cars there, I guess. I think the situation is that if people are prepared to park here and walk a little under 3 kilometers to avoid paying for parking at Roxetus, they're simply going to make the trek along Rainbow Valley Road to 26 and from there to the Edenvale Aerodrome. And I think what I'm getting at here is that Clearview has saw fit to leave Highway 26 or 12th, 13th side road at 26 open, and it's 953 meters away from the aerodrome entrance. And our road, Rainbow Valley Road, is, as I said, a fair distance more, I forget what I said now. So, at 1.54 kilometers. I don't have any problem with it being closed, to be quite honest with you. But the intersections are very similar in that they're all T intersections, and they're all on the opposite side of the road from the aerodrome. So they're all the same kind of layout. But I think the key here is, in comparison to Clearview's traffic plan, which has roadways that are far closer in proximity to the Edenvale Aerodrome remaining open, it does seem that it's unwarranted in my opinion, but I'm not going to object to that. should the roadway be closed, Springwater Township should not incur any costs, and I don't support or believe anything more than closed road signage, lots of it maybe, be put in place. Anybody who tries to move the road road closed signage or the barricades is committing an arrestable offense. And also in respect of the part there about people parking on Rainbow Valley Road, I would really feel that the OPP are going to be far too busy that day to be towing vehicles off of Rainbow Valley Road, to be quite honest with you, when they have that many people coming and going. And Roxodus is going to be paying, I would think, for paid duty police staff to be on hand. So I guess the only thing I'm concerned with is that if staff does go and put up the signs, I don't think we should be required to monitor them or pay staff to monitor them over the weekend. It's a work day that it looks like they're going to be putting them out. It's a work day when they take them back down. And I guess I do have a question for Director Coleman through Mayor Allen. And based on the money there, Director Coleman, are those, does that include the regular daytime staff hours that would be utilized to put them up, or is that figure merely an estimate for the monitoring of it over the duration of the event?
Actually, I'll redirect that to CEO Brindley, because we were part and parcel of a discussion with respect to this. So my understanding is the costs with respect to the police are going to be borne by the concert operators, and that we are not going to be incurring costs with respect to police. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, there are a significant amount of paid duty officers, including one that will be stationed at Rainbow Valley Road and Highway 26. The other question was related to fees. Primarily, it's related to additional fees. We have one staff person who is on duty, but because of the sensitivity of this, we are going to have 2 by law enforcement officers on duty during that period of time, during those days. So there is a bit of extra coverage just to protect ourselves, but by all means, we're not monitoring it, like sitting there. But when you get some party goers who might be unruly, it's nice to have 2 staff there if they're called and,
Yes.
and have to be dealt with.
Other comments? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mary Allen. What I was suggesting is the traffic on Highway 26 is going to be busy, and since Rainbow Valley Road is going to be closed from Atkinson to 26, those people are going to cut off at Collin Road to Rainbow Valley and then hit the closed sign, have to turn around and take the National Highway 26 back. So it's going to be a lot of traffic in and out of that dirt road. So my residents and I were suggesting maybe just to put a local traffic only sign to deter some of those people who are going to cross that line.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Cabral?
I just wanted to review the financial implications. I know Roxodus will be hiring paid duty police officers, but they'll be doing whatever Roxodus has assigned them to do based on their traffic management plan. As I said, my only concern is the expenditure of $1,750 for staff that, to be quite honest, I don't see how they would be needed at all when Clearview's got roads much closer that are just simply remaining open. We're taking upon ourselves to close Rainbow Valley Road. I think putting up the road closed signs would be adequate. It's a public area for the pedestrians. It's only closed to traffic. So my only concern here is the $1,750 and the additional staff, and I would suggest or make a motion that that particular part not be included.
CEO Brindley?
I'm sorry, Your Worship, I'm a little lost. Yeah, the costs will be recovered. Like, we have invoiced Roxodus for the putting up of those signs. We're not staying at those signs. We're essentially putting them up before the weekend. We're taking them down when the weekend's over. We just do have 2 by law enforcement officers on duty just in case, on call. And we have invoiced Roxodus for those fees.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cabral?
I'm sorry, I have to apologize, but what I read here is staff will seek to recover these costs by invoicing the Roxodus Music Festival. If that's the case, I would suggest that the staff be deployed if in fact Roxodus Music Festival agrees to pay prior to the event.
Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn, and through you to Councillor Cabral and Council. I understand that a festival that's not in our municipality is going to cost us money. It's unfortunate, but I do agree that putting 2 bylaw officers on is in the best interest of our residents, and whether that costs us $1,700 to ensure that should we be deployed, and it is a complaint-only basis, we're not seeking anything. And to Councillor Chapman's point, it's and speaking to staff about it, the local traffic only, it's not enforceable, but it will deter people from disrupting our residents as they make the S-Bend. So I'm in favor of making the amendment to include that additional sign. And as far as waiting to see whether Roxodus pays us back, I think that our bylaw, I mean, we put extra bylaw on for, and I might be wrong, but we do, I believe last year had 2 bylaw officers on for the Maple Syrup Festival and different things. When events do happen within our municipality, we do incur a greater cost with bylaws. So I think that this is one of those, and I would be happy if Roxodus paid us back, but even if they don't, it's in our residents' best interest to have 2 bylaw officers on.
Okay, I think we'll go to vote on this amendment then. All those in favor with the amendment? Well, it was read before. I'll reread it, that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Add that the Cullum Road be marked with signage stating local traffic only during the same period. All those in favor? Carried. So the main motion, we have a mover and a seconder, that the report from the Director of Public Works and Senior Municipal Law Enforcement Officer regarding the temporary closure of Rainbow Valley Road dated June 5th, 2019 be received, and that council approve the temporary closure of Rainbow Valley Road from Highway 26 to Atkinson Road from July 10 to 15, 2019 inclusive. And that Cullum Road be marked with signage stating local traffic only during the same period. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're moving on to the next item.
I would like to still make a motion with respect to that one, or?
Okay.
My motion is with respect to the 1750. My motion would be to, that the township not incur any costs for additional staff with respect to the Roxodus Music Festival unless these costs are by agreement in advance paid by Roxodus Music Festival.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Sorry, and my apologies, Marilyn, through you. Point of order to Clerk Chaperone. I do believe that that motion has already been voted on by this table, and should that be a notice of motion to come forward separately? And my apologies, but that is in accordance with our procedural bylaw. We've already voted on that.
Is that a note, constitute a notice of motion?
If the vote was called and determined by the chair, then the motion should be deemed as dealt with, and it would be a notice of motion in that case.
Okay, so in which case it is notice of motion, requires a seconder, and comes forward in the next meeting? Yes. Okay, are you willing to file a notice of motion then? Okay.
No, thank you, Mayor Allen.
All right. Done 9:10, so where are we at now? 9:11? Okay, we're at 9:11. 9.11, which is the outdoor save station request. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get that on the table? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman. Now, who had discussion on this, please? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. When the delegation was brought forward from Mr. Gannon about the stations. We talked about staff providing a report back to us regarding having all of the AEDs brought outdoors for all of our halls. I did have opportunity to speak with Director Schmidt today about why that wasn't brought forward, and there was some discussion around the cost. So to have those AEDs put outdoors at all our halls, the cost was roughly about $50,000, which is considerably more than what I thought it was going to be. But there is possibly an opportunity to look at some additional funds that were brought or are coming our way. And this program would fit into the criteria on using those funds. So I would like to propose that we consider to discuss the AEDs for all halls being put outdoors, and with the possibility of using the new funds coming forward to pay for those. Thank you.
Okay, so you're proposing an amendment then?
Yes, thank you. I suppose.
And do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Cabral? I'll give the clerk time to capture that. Do you need any wording again? Yep. Well, that's happening, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Oh, okay.
While we're waiting, can I ask a question? I don't want to disrupt anything here, but we got airtime, and I would just like to ask a question of our finance department about this.
I'd like to get the amendment wording so that we know what we're focusing on. Thank you. Okay, I'll turn to the clerk to read the amendment, please, as proposed.
The amendment reads that the motion now before council be amended as follows. Delete the fourth paragraph, and that the third paragraph and second paragraph be amended as follows. Remove the words Anton Mills Community Center and replace with all municipal halls.
Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, so Councillor Cabral had the first question, followed by Councillor Hanna.
Thank you very much. That was my concern too, Councillor Moore. Thanks for bringing it to our attention. I appreciate that. Through the mayor to Director Belcourt. And my question is regards to the section that talks about the anticipated costs. In particular, 10 annual monitoring, $240 per unit, $2,400 annually, but I see the asterisk there is monitoring is applicable after 2 years. So are the first 2 years included in the cost? I just want some clarification.
Director Belcourt?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Councillor Corbell. During the delegation and the particular cabinet that was put on display for council's viewing, if we were to proceed with that particular model, the first 2 years of monitoring is included in the original cost.
Okay, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. I support this initiative. I do agree that it should be everywhere, not just in one community. I guess my point being is, if we're going to do more than one, is there an opportunity for some group savings on the costs, one? And two, we never seem to enter into what I would call a payment plan. We always seem to want to buy everything out. We don't do that when we buy our personal cars or houses and so on. I'm just wondering, as a township, maybe there's an opportunity to buy all these here over a payment period, so we can do it all at once and not have to wait.
Director Schmidt, do you have the answer to that, and where potentially, what would, can you review again what the estimated cost would be for this, and where the funds might come from?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, maybe defer those questions to Director Belcourt. He may have more details on that and whether or not a payment plan is applicable. I have not dealt with the vendor, to be honest with you.
Director Belcourt, and we have Mr. Gagnon in the audience. I don't know if he has further information to offer with respect to this. Maybe he could come forward and add that, but in the interim, while he's coming up, Director Belcourt.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. As noted in the report, there are different models of cabinets on the market. They vary in price from what I could find from $1,100 to $3,000 per unit. So depending on the number per units, you'd simply multiply it. Looking at where we have them, I'm suggesting 10 locations would be appropriate of the 15 units that we currently have. So depending on which particular unit we ended up going with, could range from $11,000 to $30,000 to purchase the units. The electrical connections that are required the upfront cost could range from $4,000 to $9,000, and then after the 2 years, if we went with one particular model, there would be an additional $240 per year for monitoring of those units.
Mr. Ganon, do you have anything you can add to this, please?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Obviously, I'm not the sales representative, and I don't want to be anticipated as a sales representative for this. But my conversations with the people who are that I've been working with on this is that, yes, there is potential savings by buying in bulk. Yes, there is a potential payment plan by doing it their business, so they're looking to do that. There's also other potential savings with the current Simcoe County PAD program that this unit is already involved with. The particular unit that we proposed that evening is already monitored remotely, so it doesn't require staff to go in and actually visit each station as it is, and there's all these different potentials that they would be more than happy to work with. I'm not certain what Director Belcourt has looked at for other models. I can only speak for the one that I looked at and proposed. And I do agree that all 10 locations should have them, but I still like the ant mills first.
Thank you. What a surprise. Council, just a suggestion. Should we refer this back to staff to get a little more information before we make the significant investment, including on where the sources of funds might come for this? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mary Allen. I would also ask, because from what Director Belcourt indicated, there may be a number of different models that are available.
Director Belcourt?
Thank you, Mayor Allen, through to Councillor Corbell. That is correct. I found 3 different models available in the Ontario region. North America wide, there's several models that are available.
Okay, thank you. So the mover and the seconder, can we...
Sorry, Mayor Allen, follow up, please.
Follow up?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask that if it gets sent back to staff, that they provide, a few options with these other models that they think might be suitable as well. That's all. Thank you.
So, are you, the mover and seconder willing to adjust this amendment? Clerk Chaparral.
Thank you. So at this point, if that is the will of council, Councillor Moore could withdraw her amendment request, and then somebody could table a referral.
Councillor Moore?
Okay, so I'm willing to do that.
Okay.
I will withdraw. No? No, I don't?
Deputy Mayor Coghlan?
Thank you. If we were to refer this to staff, we would still need to amend it so that it's not just Anton Mills, that it's what this is, what we're talking about, all 10 or 10 locations indicated.
Which would be in the subsequent amendment, that would be. Okay, so it's withdrawing this, and the adjusted amendment is that the motion now before council be referred to staff for further financial implications regarding all municipal halls. Mover and a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Coghlan and Councillor Moore. All those in favor? Carried. So where are we at? 9:12. Okay, and moving to, we're at 9.12, which is the budget request for Spring Water 25th anniversary event, and I need a mover and a second to get that on the table. Councillor Cabral, Deputy Mayor Coghlan. And that the report from the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee regarding the budget request for Springwater 25th anniversary event dated June 5, 2019 be received, and that council support the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee and the Heritage Advisory Committee in collaborating on a joint doors open Springwater 25th anniversary event on September 21, 2019, and that council approve a budget in the amount of $10,000 for the joint event, highlighting it as a Springwater Community Initiative discussion. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I have an amendment to that motion, that the motion now be before council be amended as follows. Delete the amount of $10,000 and replace with $1,500.
And a seconder for that? Councillor Moore. Discussion with respect to the amendment. Can you, Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. So Culture Committee is brand new to Springwater, and we are very excited. So we got some brainstorming ideas in our meeting in May, and we came up with to host an event with the Heritage Committee and for our 25th anniversary for Springwater. We had lots of ideas and planning, and the Culture Committee does not have any money to start with, so we suggested $10,000. Last night we had another meeting to stream down what we wanted and to come up with $1,500, the same amount that the Heritage Committee receives through Doors Open. We can work with $1,500. We have lots of plans. We streamlined our thought process and our budget to be more open and more cost savings to the township residents.
Thank you. Further discussion on this? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. It's a comment. I was just curious when I saw this on the agenda. I wasn't aware it was the 25th anniversary, and I just kind of wondering, maybe I should be directing this through you to CAO Brindley, as to why township itself, I guess at some point in time, might have proposed something like this. I'm just wondering why it's the Cultural Activities Advisory Committee that's kind of looking into it. So it's just a question there.
CEO Brindley?
Through the mayor to Councillor Cabral, it was never brought up as part of any budget. It was never brought up by council members, so staff was never directed to look at a 25th anniversary event for 2019. It just never came up.
Okay. Any other discussion before we vote on the amendment? All those in favor? Carried. So the main motion has changed to $1,500, that's the only change. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on to 10.1, information reports. And can I have a mover and a seconder to get that on the table, please? Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Coughlin. And we are dealing with Building Department report for the month of April and the replacement of 2006 Dodge Ram 1500, RFQ 219-13-RPP. Any discussions with respect to either of those? So we're voting those two, with the exception of item 3, which was dealt with separately. All those in favor? Carried. Verbal reports. Director Spagnell, any verbal reports on the official plan or economic development update?
Mayor Allen, I do not have anything new to report for either item.
Okay, thank you. I don't believe there are any county updates. Any municipal updates? Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Aunt Mills is having their garage sale this Saturday, June the 8th. Their spring cleanup is Sunday, June the 9th, starting at 4 o'clock. They are planning a family day event in September. And also the Menacing Recreation Committee is planning their annual Labor Day tournament in September. Those ideas and planning for that is already in the works. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Coughlin, myself, and Councillor Cabral were at the Maple Syrup Festival dinner last evening, post Maple Syrup Festival dinner, another well-run event up in Elmvale. And there was a report out there, and there were 27 groups that received donations from the fair, which totaled $13,700, which was very much appreciated, and each of the groups got up and expressed their thanks and indicated how the monies would be used, which was great. The fair this year, as we all know, suffered from some pretty wicked weather that weekend, so numbers were down a bit, but another valiant effort by all of the volunteers, and it just chugs along each year and does amazing things along with the Fall Festival. I was at the FCM conference with with Wanda, my wife, on the weekend, from last Thursday through to returning Monday, down in Quebec City. It's called Building Better Futures, and it was very good. There were about 3,000 delegates there, and from across the country, and I'll be doing a more fulsome report on it, which I'll get to council in the near future. I went to a study session, Energy Recovery and Environment, the Quebec Biomethanation Plant project, to see how they burn their garbage and convert it to steam, which they sell. A good presentation on the Global Plastics Challenge, good presentation on affordable housing, and many others, which will be online, so I'll incorporate those. One of the highlights of the conference was 3 Simcoe County councillors were voted on the Ontario caucus of the FCM board, which is great, and those were Deputy Mayor Steph Walma from Tiny, Mayor Jeff Lehman from Barrie, and Councillor Kathy Jeffrey from Collingwood. So continuing good representation on that board. Next is Springwater Swing, which is next Wednesday at Orr Lake. Good progress on that. We've got 100 golfers at this point. We've got many kind sponsors, and looking forward to the weather. Touch wood, it is supposed to be half decent weather. I think that's about it for updates. Any other updates? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you very much, Mayor Allen. I just want to remind everybody that Music in the Park commences, I think, June the 28th, 1 to 4 on Saturdays in Elmvale at Queen and Yonge in the Gateway Park. And they've got some artists already lined up for that. And the other item to keep in mind is the Elmvale Fantasy Street Party, which occurs on July the 20th, 2017. And I believe the theme for this year's sci-fi street party is Harry Potter. So that's something to look forward to. Thank you.
When does the market open in Elmville?
I'm sorry, I have to apologize. I think it opens in a couple of weeks.
Director Belcourt.
Or is it July 1st?
That was a test for Councillor Cabral.
Yeah, well, I'll have to go buy my vegetables there.
CAO Brindley.
Mr. Mayor, I have it actually down for me to attend on the 14th,
Okay.
so it's in my schedule.
Yes, she did. I should have made it a Jeopardy question. Be there or be square. Okay, thank you. Any notices of motion? Okay, any items for future consideration? Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn, and I guess through you to council. Understanding now that it is the 25th anniversary of Springwater Township, how would this council go about discussing whether or not we would like to do some branding or some commemoration of that in support of what's happening? I know we don't have to do Clearview Days or anything like that, but when would that discussion happen and how would that be brought forward? If we all, I mean, there's always like little pins or something that, you know, members of past council could get, just something to commemorate the anniversary.
Councillor Chapman, so the two groups that came up with the proposal and the amount of money, would they be able to incorporate that into their consideration?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Yes, we have talked about that last night, that we're looking at, Heritage Committee's looking at tree saplings, and we are, as a culture, is looking at either pens or pins, and I'm looking into that, and I will have a report back on our July meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. No other items for future consideration? Okay, moving on to bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder for approval of the bylaws? Deputy Mayor Coughlin, Councillor Cabral, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. That's 219-050-OPA 55, lots 8 and 9. Any discussion on these? All those in favor? Carried. And can I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaw to confirm proceedings of council? Councillor Moore, Councillor Chapman, that bylaw 219-051 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on June 5, 2019, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And a mover and a seconder to adjourn, Councillor Moore and Councillor Chapman. The regular meeting of Township of Springwater does adjourn at 9:35 p.m. to meet again at regular meeting on June 19th, 6:30 p.m. Council Chambers, Admin Center in Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Council. Thank you for people tuning in. And we're probably in the second quarter now.